Oh, we have this one too. Does it work? It's not. Excuse me. No, it's not.
At this time, we're going to begin our Stantec presentation for public outreach. City Manager.
Thank you. Again, we have Stantec here. Kelly and Kyle, they should know the city fairly well just by looking through all of the information and data that we pulled out for the past almost 3 years. This is a public outreach, again, to give the public commissioners time to ask questions. You have on your agenda today a resolution to start the communication to our residents. And so we just wanted to go over a couple of things with you today. I think there were a couple of questions at the last commission meeting, maybe from Commissioner Perno and a couple others. We're going to try to clarify some of that today as well. We do have some residents here, and you guys can go through your presentation, and they are more than welcome to ask questions.
Wonderful, thank you. Kelly Westover with Stantec. Happy to be here with you this evening. I think we're having a slide clicking issue.
It's not, there it goes. There it goes.
Okay, there we go. So we have a short presentation this evening to go over the stormwater rate study. This is our agenda. You'll see that we've included some information about your stormwater system as well as the study, billing recommendations, and the timeline associated with it. So the city manages stormwater for many reasons, primarily regulatory requirements as well as flood protection. Thank you, stormwater. You can hear the thunder right now. And also improving water quality that goes into your water bodies surrounding the city. So you have a pretty detailed and intricate stormwater system. There's a lot out there to maintain to ensure your assets are up to date, that they provide those services for the community. This is a picture of some recent improvements that staff has made along Virginia Avenue. And as we've gone through the effort to work with staff during the study period, we've identified some key challenges facing the commission and the city. The system's in need of repair. There's a large list of unfunded capital projects. There's a lot of demand on the system with the storms and the rebuilding associated with it. The stormwater fund, we've discovered, has not been self-sustaining, and it's been receiving some support from the water and sewer fund. And we'd like to have emergency reserves, and the stormwater utility currently does not have one. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kyle Stevens to go over the components within the stormwater rate study, and then we'll cover the next steps associated with it.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. Great to be here this evening. And so with regards to the stormwater study, it's really a series of interconnected investigations. The first of which is what we call the revenue requirements. Simply stated, this is how much money do we need each year to operate the enterprise sustainably for the long term. Next, we'll look at the fee basis. How do we measure different parcels' usage of your stormwater system from a contribution standpoint? Then we'll look at fee structure options that we've recommended for the community. And finally, what are the results? How will the changes that have been recommended as part of the study impact the customers and citizens within the service area? So a starting point, on the left side in green, I've stacked the expenses for fiscal year 2021, the year that we're currently in, and it consists of really 3 items. So you've got personnel, you've got the operating, which is the activities that really keep the system efficient and clean, keep debris out, cleaning, and then you've got capital investments. When we look on the right side, this is how we're currently funding those expenditures. And so at the bottom, we've got the stormwater fee. It's roughly $376,000. That's the fee that's currently on the utility bill for most parcels. The largest component of revenue, though, is coming from the water enterprise fund being transferred over to stormwater to pay for expenses here. And we really do fundamentally believe that that's an unsustainable construct going forward, because what that fundamentally means, if you kind of play this forward for a number of years, is if you want to try to keep doing that, expenses are going to rise on the stormwater side. You'd have to keep increasing that transfer and raise water rates in order to do it. Then we've got stormwater impact fees and some miscellaneous revenues as well up there at the top. So as it stands, we've really got limited capacity for capital funding. The majority of the funding is coming from water and sewer. One of the big components here is the Stormwater Capital Improvement Plan. And so over the last few years, as we've been conducting this study, we've been able to integrate the best priority of projects as well as different funding considerations into a plan for capital investment over the next 10 years. And this is really one of the key benefits of the community having a stormwater utility, because in the next few years, this capital plan right now supports for many of the projects. For every $1 that ratepayers pay towards stormwater projects, we're getting $3 from other sources, federal, state sources. So it really is one of these key areas where we're able to leverage outside dollars to really accelerate the capital program and do a lot more capital than we'd otherwise be able to do if we had to fund it all internally within the community. This particular screenshot here is just a snapshot of our analysis tool, and so I'll walk through it real quick as it stands. What we're trying to do here long term is balance two things. So in orange is the amount of money going out, the cash coming out, and black is the cash coming in. This works just like your personal bank account at home. These two have to be pretty well balanced over time. You'll see there's some fluctuations. If we were to spend more than we're bringing in, we would pull our balances down to 0 or below. And so that can't work. We've got to be able to balance this over the long term. And the plan that we've come up and recommended for the community is a plan of increases on the stormwater fee revenue such that will be sustainable over the long term. And what that means is in the first year, the fee needs to come up in the amount of revenue that it generates by about 222%. The next year after that, the current projection is about 50%, and the year after that is 19%. And so, why are these so high? And that all goes back to the first point we just talked about, which is we've got to fundamentally realign the revenue here to be in alignment with the magnitude of the expenses. And right now, we're using water to fund the majority of stormwater. What this plan will do is very quickly realign it so that stormwater can be self-sustaining, so that the stormwater rate revenues will be able to fully pay for the operations and capital of the stormwater program. So fee basis. The current stormwater fee, you do have one in place currently. It is a bifurcated fee, meaning that if you're a single family home, you get charged one rate, and on a year's basis, it's about $42.48, a little over $3.50 per month. It's currently on a monthly utility bill. If you're non-single family, you get a different flat rate that's about $106.56 a year. So you have two flat rates, one for single family, one for non-single family. What we have looked at on the left here is a number of bases or units of measurement that are considered when looking at how to scale stormwater charges for different properties within the community. So the first up there is taxable value. When a community maybe doesn't have a full standalone stormwater fund, they'll fund it out of the general fund, use taxable value. But as we go down on this list, so flat fee is where the community currently is, dwelling units, gross area, the size of a parcel, pervious area, and then finally impervious area. These items are getting more equity, so we're aligning the way that we're charging stormwater with the way that properties generate potential stormwater to the system. Impervious area here is meant to be things like hard concrete or buildings that disturb the hydrological flow of water when a rain event occurs. And this is really easy to think about. So the picture on the right side over here is kind of the same parcel, pre-development on the right. The runoff coefficient, so if you think about a gallon of water hitting that, 20% of it's going to run off. After development, when we have a lot more impervious area, what we often see is a much higher runoff coefficient. One that's out there in the industry is kind of 0.7, so we're getting a lot more runoff. That's why impervious area is oftentimes considered kind of the gold standard for measuring how parcels impact your stormwater system. You're designing the municipal system to take the stormwater load of developed parcels and other parcels within the community. Fee structure and customer impacts. And so one of the recommendations is on the single family side of the equation is to move the fee structure forward and bring in 2 tiers. And what I mean by that is on this particular chart, we have looked at the distribution of impervious area for all single family homes within the community. On the x-axis going across the bottom, that's 100 square feet of impervious area going up to 10,000. And the height of the bars represents how many homes fall at that given bucket of impervious area. And so what you see here is a real nice bell curve. And what that tells me is there's a lot of characteristics that are very common to single family homes. So you can think they all have driveways oftentimes, similar sizes, sheds, pools in the backyard, common elements to one another. And that's why you see this shape like this. What we're recommending is instead of a flat fee for every single family home, that there's a 2-tier system by which every parcel that is below 2,900 square feet of impervious area would be charged 1 rate. And the properties in the community that represent the larger 50% of properties would be charged the 2nd rate. And this is an advancement in the rate structure so that it now has a little bit more sensitivity in picking up some of the differences in impervious area from parcel to parcel. With regards to the single family fees, in the recommended plan for next fiscal year, this would be fiscal year 2022, the tier 1 fee would be $71.29, the tier 2 fee would be $139 and $78, and that's on a per year basis. So just gives you a sense of the customer impacts. The current fee is $42.48, and like I mentioned, that is universal to all single-family homes. This is an example of a smaller parcel on the lower 50 percentile of single-family homes within the community. That fee would go up to $71.29. That's a difference of about $28.81 per year, or 67%. If we look at a tier 2 property, what we'll see there again is it has the same current fee, but now the updated fee would put this one into the 2nd tier. So their fee would be $139.78. This is a $97.30 increase, or 129% from what the current fee is on an annualized basis. Now, with regard to non-single family, one of the things and one of the observations we had when we started to do the study was you had these 2 flat fees. And on the non-single family side, what you'll often see is there's a big difference in the size of non-single family parcels. And you can really think about this dependent on the type of activity they're engaged in. So think of a small car wash versus maybe a much larger industrial type operation. There's going to be very different size parcels with a lot of differences in impervious area. So what's often used in the industry is what's called a measured approach, where we're measuring those individual parcels and sizing the fee proportional to the amount of impervious area that this has. This is oftentimes referred to as kind of an equivalent billing unit. This graphic shows kind of how a commercial property on the left is equal to, say, 10 single-family homes when we compare the overall impervious area to the right. So we have recommended that approach for all non-single-family properties within the community. And this graphic up here just tries to give you a sense that this fee would, scale for different sizes of impervious area. The larger it gets, the larger the fee. And so, as I mentioned a second ago, just to think about this conceptually, overall we need about 222% more revenue next year. You saw the 2 single-family impacts; they were quite a bit less than that. And part of the reason for that is because on the non-single-family side, there are much larger parcels where these bills are now going up at a larger percentage in size proportional to that impervious area. So a couple examples of this. This is a smaller non-single family parcel here. It's got impervious area of roughly 8,000 square feet. That looks like to the system roughly 2 single family homes. You can see the EBU calculation there. The current annual fee is $106.56. The calculated fee for this parcel is $289.34. That's an increase of $182 or 71% for this particular parcel. Now, I mentioned some of the larger increases of this modification are going to be on the larger parcels. And so in this particular one, what you'll see is it's about 36,000 square feet of impervious area, so quite a bit more. But the fee currently is the exact same fee that we just saw on the parcel before, so that $106.56. What we're recommending is, because this would now be measured, and it looks like 9 single-family homes, the fee for this one on an annual basis would be $1,300 $1,304. That's an increase of a little over about roughly $1,200, 1,100%. And again, big increase, but what this is doing is really ensuring there's good alignment between all the different payers to the system and the amount of impervious area that they have and their potential to contribute stormwater to the city system. Well, one additional recommendation within the city of Lynn Haven, you do have a significant population of vacant parcels that are served fundamentally by the stormwater system. I like to think about this often as, when we do have a design event storm, and what that really means is, a storm of intensity with some duration to it, the ground will saturate, and oftentimes at those events, no matter what parcel you have, even if it's vacant, it's going to be connected to the system. You're going to have some runoff coming to the system. We are recommending, as part of the study, a fee that would apply to vacant parcels. It would be a little bit different in the sense that it's not looking at the impervious area on the parcels, because there is none in these cases, but rather the size of the parcel. So we're recommending that it would be based on the gross area of the parcel. It would be capped at 5 acres, so the fee would not scale above 5 acres. And it would essentially represent, for the fee that we're charging to impervious, about 29% of that. So we've kind of calculated that using some industry guidelines that give us an idea of that runoff again, difference between a parcel that's developed and non-developed here. And so to think about this, about $40.54 for every 3,900 square feet of impervious area. Now, the vast majority of parcels within Lynn Haven, over 90% are less than 1 acre. So you do have a sense where you've got a large, many small parcels and some really large parcels. This chart right here just summarizes the set of fees that are being recommended. So there's fundamentally 4 fees that are contemplated as part of this study and recommended for the community. Looking at fiscal year 22, that's a vacant fee that's per every 3,900 square feet, capped at 5 acres. A fee that's for non-single family, where it's again going to be measured on the increments of impervious area, and then 2 tiers for single family, with 2,900 square feet being the break point between the tiers. What we have shown outside of 2022 here is a projection going forward of likely increases as it stands right now, understanding the expenses that are contemplated and the capital investments going forward. I think one of the key points, though, to recognize is this is not set in stone going forward. Of course, the city will look on an annual basis as it does its budgeting processes to understand the exact level of increases going forward, which will allow you to recognize things like potentially increased grants or a different prioritization in your capital planning efforts. One of the other considerations as part of the study that I wanted to mention is the impact fees. And so impact fees are different than the other rates we've talked about tonight. Impact fees are fundamentally assessed when you've got new development happening within your community. You can think about a new development of single-family homes. You have oftentimes, whether it's water and sewer or stormwater like we're talking about tonight, invested in a large system that is not only serving your current customers, but as new customers are built, the system then has to absorb their flows onto the system, or you may have to construct new facilities to serve those flows. So what an impact fee does is it allows you to assess this fee up front that allows those parcels to buy into your system and contribute toward the system's investments that you've either made historically or you're going to make in the near future. Very common throughout the state of Florida. And the way to think about this is without this fee, if you had to construct the same system that you have today, you would have to raise your O&M rates to do it because it's kind of a zero-sum game to a certain extent. What we have done as part of the study is looked at all those investments that the community has made historically. The current fee is roughly 19 cents per square foot of impervious area for each new development. For an average single-family home, I put that down on the bottom graphic, that comes out to about $551. When we looked at the updated basis, it's roughly $46 per square foot of impervious area. So this is incorporating all the different investments you made, as well as the underlying inflation in these investments, which things like steel and cement have not gotten cheaper over time. And so this factors that into the calculation and really trues it up to a current cost. So for that exact same average size single family home at 2,900 square feet, this impact fee that we have calculated would be $1,334. And really, fundamentally, this sets the top limit by which you could set this fee to. So just to run through the challenges that we identified and the solutions that have come out of the study. So the system is in need of repair. There is a very significant list of projects out there that need to be done on stormwater. So we do believe that the recommended plan that brings in some additional revenues would allow you to build kind of in-house capacity and resources to be able to invest in those projects, but also the really key thing here is leveraging outside dollars. So since these grants are available, having money available to get plans ready and have shovel-ready projects will allow you to access these grants and these dollars that are outside the community. It's just a huge benefit. Demand on the system to accommodate and redevelopment and growth. So that review of impact fees and the recommendation to increase the level of that will ensure for any new development that's happening, they're paying for their fair share of the system's capacity. Stormwater fund is not self-sustaining. That is the really high-level finding of this study, and we are recommending strongly that you consider these adjustments to increase the amount of revenue that you're bringing in on the fee, such that it will be self-sustaining, and secondarily, it will remove that support from the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. No reserve for emergencies is the last one I'll mention. Being a coastal city, storms come up. You also can have unplanned system failures. Having some money in the bank to deal with issues like that is a really key benefit of having a stormwater utility, and its best practice is really fundamentally to have those dollars for the rainy day, if you will, no pun intended, such that you can address those over time. And this plan does complement that, or contemplate that, so that over time you would build up 3 months of O&M reserves, which is pretty much considered the kind of minimum, if you will, in the industry of reserves over time. So billing methodology is the final consideration for the study. I've mentioned a few times the current way that you're charging stormwater, which is the utility billing side. So that's the left side of this diagram. And what that fundamentally means is you're using the water billing infrastructure that's in place to assess your stormwater fees. So they're attached to water and sewer infrastructure. What we're recommending is a move to a non-ad valorem assessment, which means that the stormwater fees would show up on each property owner's tax bill on the very bottom of the bill, the non-ad valorem section. What that allows the city to do is, in our mind, gain some efficiencies and be very accurate in the way that we bill stormwater. So one of the hardest problems with the utility billing is ensuring you're matching up utility accounts to parcels. And parcels are really dynamic. They split, they're combined, they change. In your city, oftentimes you'll annex or move around a little bit. Doing it on the property roll allows you to grab that new roll from the property appraiser each year and make any adjustments that are needed to ensure we're really fundamentally assessing this fee in a fair way. It's also typically thought of as a higher collection rate is one of the things that's brought out. The only really point to note when you make that move is there are strict timelines that are associated with it, because it has to be on the tax bill that goes out in November. So there is a set of statutory dates that the city needs to meet to make sure that you have the fees identified for each parcel and they're going out to the property owner by those specified times. Next steps, and so I'll just run through this. We're here today on July 27th, which is a public outreach meeting, commission initial resolution. After this meeting on August 2, if the commission approves the initial resolution, it would put into motion some mail notices going out to property owners, informing them of the upcoming assessment, the amount of the assessment for their parcel. August 10th would be the proposed assessment roll. August 24th would be a public hearing for the final resolution and to adopt the final assessment roll. October 1st would be the date of the effective new rates, but really fundamentally this is on the November tax bill is when property owners would see this at the start of November. And so with that, we'll conclude the presentation, but happy to entertain any questions, comments.
Guess me first. So impervious surface, does that just include the house, or does that include the driveway and anything else that might have a cement platform?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. So the way that we identified impervious area was we got the databases from the Bay County property appraiser. They include fundamentally for impervious area the building structures, right? They include oftentimes the concrete and asphalt surfaces on a property. And so what we went through is we took those different elements that are impervious area and added them up, summated them to create the full footprint. So it will include the accessory structures on a property, if there's sheds in the back, if there's patios in the back. I'm really trying to capture anything that would stop the permeation of water within the property. It's not going to include fundamentally, though, just to think about what's not included there, is something like gravel per se. They're not going to capture that type of data. So it's really going to be more the built environment that's been constructed and recorded on the property appraisers' databases.
The other question I've been receiving is the notice that's going out, is that going to tell them how much impervious area that they have? Or is that going to be later down the line?
Yeah, it'll typically include the billing units on there, so it may either reflect the impervious area or what would be considered what I term the EBUs, the equivalent billing units, which is a measure of impervious. It's how the assessment's actually assessed. But it would include and tell them what tier they're in as well. That's the real critical.
Okay, so that's going to tell them that on there. And as far as how many square feet of impervious area, do you know if that'll eventually go on the property appraisal website or not?
Say it one more time.
How much impervious area that a property has, is that going to be on the Bay County Property Appraisal website at some time?
Absolutely. The same data that we found, you can typically find by pulling up your property, and the real key thing is you've got to add them up. So it'll show them in typically the elements of it, and you've just got to add those different components up to get to the overall footprint.
So is it going to actually say impervious area? This is how many square feet of impervious area? You have to add it up.
No, it'll have, it's there right now today if you went to it. It talks about it more in the sense of what are the built things that are on your property. So what's the individual base area of the house? What's the shed area? It'll have those elements that we've then added up to create the impervious, yes.
All right.
So it'll square footage, basically. Yeah, square foot of your house, how large your pool is, your patio, all of those things, and then you add them up to get that number.
Exactly correct.
All right. Any additional questions from the commission?
The vacant lot is $1,800 a year. Is that the cap?
No, the cap is, right off the top of my head, it's a little over $2,300 is the cap. So it's a little bit higher than that. I'd shown an example, I think, in one of the presentations of an $1,800 parcel. I think that's where that number came from last time, but the cap's actually a little bit higher for 5 acres.
Did we get how many parcels there were?
Yes.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you go on and share that with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can grab the exact number of parcels off the top of my head. That greater than 90% of the parcels are less than 1 acre in your area that are vacant.
I think it was about 753 that were less than an acre.
Exactly. So there's a little over 860 total vacant parcels, I want to say. And yeah, the vast majority of them are under 1 acre. And there's only a handful that are over that portion. And then a much smaller handful that actually hit that cap.
All right. Additional questions?
I don't have a question. The only thing I was going to make a comment on is I just want residents to understand when they see, depending on what category, when I take residential families, family households, is when they see that $71.29 or the $139.78, that's not what you pay extra. You have to factor in what you were paying before, so you subtract the $42.48. So depending on what tier you are, if you're in the lower tier, the 2,900 square feet, you're going to be paying an extra $2.40 a month. If you're in the higher tier, then you're going to pay an extra $8.11 a month. And that doesn't even take into consideration that the last meeting we voted on the budget proposal, which decreased the millage rate to 0.2. And once you factor that in, for every $100,000 that your property is appraised at, that's $20 less than it was last year. So once you factor that in, it's going to be even less. So I just want to make sure residents understand that.
Just to add one point to that too, which I think is critical, and I neglected to mention is, should this go forward in approval, you'll see that stormwater fee come off your utility bill. It'll completely disappear and then move over to taxable.
Good point.
I think is what you're getting at. The increment is really the change here.
Thank you.
And that, I'll piggyback on Commissioner Warwick. I agree with what he was saying. It's, it's never fun, I guess, to tell people they have to pay a little bit more money On the flip side, I can remember a year and a half or so ago, those of us that were on the board dealing with customers with stormwater issues, with old iron pipes from the 1920s or whatever. And I remember all of us saying, well, if a commission in the last 100 years would have not kicked the can down the road, we wouldn't be in this situation. So it's, I mean, no one likes to spend more money. On the flip side, I think about our posterity. I think about those that'll live here when we're possibly gone. And I don't want to look back and say, boy, that was a lousy group, you know, back then after the hurricane, when we have a good chance to go ahead and get a handle on it. So that's all I have on it, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Additional comments, questions from the commission? Any questions from the audience? Mr. Walker?
What about property that is, first of all, this is a tax, right?
It's not fundamentally considered a tax, so non-applicable assessment. It'll show up on the tax bill, but it's not a tax, right? Tax would be based on value of the
What about
property.
tax-exempt properties?
Tax-exempt properties are still included in this. So like
Will be
insurance.
included in assessment, okay? What about houses that, for example, have a driveway that 3/4 of it belongs to the city, and that's not permanent? Would that be counted in tax people?
So it's a good point. So this reflects what the Bay County property appraiser has identified is on the parcel.
The way they appraise
The way they have appraised it, the way they've identified the building and structure of the parcel.
houses that are on stilts.
You want to talk about the mic?
Yes.
Yeah, if you could come to the microphone,
Because
please.
we are streaming, so those folks at home can hear.
Okay, houses, last question. Houses that are on stilts.
Yes.
Underneath, and I know of a couple of them that all the water from my neighbor goes right underneath me. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So houses on stilts are considered just like a house that's on flat. And the idea there is that the height, if you think of the water falling, the hydrology has been disrupted. You know, oftentimes too, there'll be a slab under there, oftentimes, or compacted where you know, cars may park or something. But there's no differentiation in the data we've received that would tell a difference there. It's typically built stormwater just the same as any other parcel.
Well, that goes as far as concerns the following. If you have a house like you're describing, and in 1920, when it was built here. And because this city changed the growth rate on certain property, the house here has to be that high up. They don't have permeable land anymore. It runs off, like I said, runs to the other house. You're receiving their water, and you're saying that that house here is not disturbing the permeable ground, but all the water goes underneath it and goes into the ground. I don't see where your equation works out here.
Well, so, no, it's a great point. And I think what you're getting at is there's many nuances within a community such as yours, right? Different properties, different development characteristics. A study like this one and the rates that we're recommending, or any utility rates, right? We're going to have to average, or we're going to have to make rates that are applicable to the community
Okay.
as a whole.
Okay,
And
now
so
you're
that's what
talking.
it's best. That's what it's best designed to do, is try to take in the large characteristics and changes within the parcels. What you're describing, there may be very, you know, distinct nuances and changes to parcel. When we set utility rates, so we've got to take into account the best practices in the industry
Okay.
and the overall community. And so that's what we really fundamentally
Well,
try
if
to
you
do.
look at it that way, then they can accept that. Because there are a lot of houses on stilts around here.
Totally
And
understand.
a lot of them being imposed upon by their neighbors. So, thank you.
Additional questions from the audience? All right, thank you for your presentation, and we'll be following up post-commission meeting. All right, presentation adjourned.